Good evening, and welcome to the May 7th, 2019 School Board meeting. This meeting is now in session. Please stand while our Career Center Air Force JROTC cadets present the colors.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Colors. Center. Base. Forward. March.
Thank you. You may be seated. Tonight, tonight we have one recognition, and I'd like to invite Dr. Greg Robertson, principal at Washington Lee High School, to join me at the podium. Now it's on. Okay, very good. And it is my pleasure to congratulate Dr. Robertson for receiving the Virginia High School League Award of Merit as the Northern Region Administrator of the Year. The Virginia High School League, or the VHSL, is an alliance of Virginia high schools that promotes education, leadership, sportsmanship, character, and citizenship for students by establishing and maintaining high standards for school activities and competitions. The VHSL Award of Merit is given to individuals who have had a positive impact on high school athletic and activity programs at the school, conference, region, and state level. Dr. Robertson, who was selected unanimously for this award by the VHSL Northern Region members, was nominated by Carol Calloway, Activities Director at Washington Lee. In her nomination, she described his willingness to represent the region on VHSL committees and his dedication to stay informed by attending VHSL membership meetings, as well as attending national and state interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association conferences. This award celebrates Dr. Robertson's passion, support, and recognition of the power of after-school activities. Congratulations, Dr. Robertson. We appreciate all that you do. Your commitment to ensuring there are ample opportunities for students to participate in after-school activities. Your contribution to efforts, and in doing so, you contribute to efforts to reach the APS strategic plan goal for healthy, safe, and supported students.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'd like to invite my board colleagues now and Dr. Murphy forward for a photo, and any other Washington Lee staff who are present in support, please come up and join us with for that photo. Thank you. Thank you again, Dr. Robertson, for that kind of dedication to our schools and our county and our students. And we are now at the announcements section of the agenda. Tomorrow, May 8th, the School Board Policy Subcommittee will meet at noon. Board members, do you have any items to announce? You do? Tanya?
Yes, I just wanted to take a moment to announce that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I wanted to remind everyone to take a moment to learn about mental health, to become aware of the prevalence of mental illness, but not just that, the importance of ensuring that you are taking care of yourself socially, emotionally, and ensuring that your mental health is in a good place. And if it's not, there's so many resources out there for you to seek. It's important to understand the prevalence of mental illness and also to take away the stigma that some of our society still carries about it. And while we are making progress, we are not where we should be. So I just wanted to share some information, some stats about the prevalence of mental illness, that we understand that we have friends, family members, ourselves, community members who are dealing with mental illness, and as a community coming together and working through this and addressing these concerns, we really can make a change and support each other through these times where people are suffering through mental health illness. So approximately 1 in 5 adults in the U.S. experiences mental illness in a given year. 1.1% of adults in the U.S. live with schizophrenia. 2.6% of adults in the U.S. live with bipolar disorder. 6.9% of adults in the U.S. had at least one major depressive episode in the past year. Approximately 1 in 5 youth aged 13 to 18 experiences a severe mental disorder at some point during their life. For children aged 8 to 15, the estimate is 13%. This is happening in our community. Please take some time to find out about the mental health resources that are available. You can go to the NAMI website or just look up May is Mental Health Awareness Month and you'll get a list of resources. And so I just want to take a moment to share and make you aware that it's time to check on our mental health. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other board members, do you have announcements? No? Okay. And we are now at the public hearing section of the meeting. And this is the public hearing on the school board's proposed FY 2020 budget. And as I'm sure everyone recalls, we switched the order of this meeting and our last budget work session so that speakers who were interested in coming to this public hearing had the advantage of having heard the board's comments at the last budget work session, the 7th budget work session, which occurred last Thursday. So before we call the speakers, I will review the school board's adopted speaker guidelines. The school board welcomes public comment and allows comment at most regular board meetings. If you would like to speak but have not signed up electronically, you must submit a speaker slip to the clerk before the agenda item you wish to speak on is called. So that means if you have not already signed up electronically and you wish to speak on this item at the public hearing, you need to make sure you have a speaker slip into the clerk right now. Speakers are called in the order in which they sign up. Each speaker may speak for up to 2 minutes, and there is a timer to help you keep track of your time. The timer begins when the speaker starts speaking, and you should conclude your remarks when the buzzer sounds. To ensure all speakers are understood, regardless of their native language, the board has made the following revision to current guidelines. If a speaker addresses the board in a language other than English and an interpreter is present, the speaker will have 2 minutes to speak, and the interpreter will have up to 2 additional minutes to translate the comments for the board. All comments should address matters related to Arlington Public Schools. Speakers should be courteous and address your comments to the entire school board. Generally, board members do not respond to public comments at meetings. If you have written comments, which we encourage, please give them to the clerk to distribute to the board. We ask the audience to refrain from applauding. I understand tonight we have a number of students who have signed up to speak during the public hearing. And when we have student speakers, we invite them to speak first so they do not have to stay out late on a school night. Once all of the students have had a turn, the remaining speakers will be called up in the order that the speaker request forms were received. So I invite any students who have signed up to speak to line up at the yellow speaker sign, and we will take your comments first. Please be sure to state your name when you begin. Thank you.
Okay, the first set of speakers, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, Ruth Halesali. Yes. Mihak Shah and Jenny Zavapage. Yes.
And the timer will begin when you begin.
Hi, my name is Mehak Shah, and I just wanted to say that I'm grateful that the board has decided to keep the funding for the equity and excellence position. This means so much to me and every other minority. Thank you for listening to us, and we feel like our voices have been heard, and that is something most minorities don't feel. So thank you for this opportunity and making minorities feel like they matter.
Hi, my name is Jenny Zarpege. I would like to thank the school board for making the decision to keep the funding for the equity and excellence position. This will affect all the minorities, and this means so much for me and every other minority. I now feel confident with my brother entering high school with the same support that I have, and still, yeah. Thank you so much for listening to us, and this isn't normal for the voices of minorities to be heard. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ruth Halesali, and I just wanted to come and thank the board for making the decision to keep the Office of Equity and Excellence. Although I understand that the board is faced with many difficult decisions every year, this is not something that should have been in jeopardy in the first place. Regardless, we're really, really appreciative that you guys took the time to listen to each and every one of us a couple weeks ago, and that you genuinely took into consideration what we said. You've made it so that minorities in APS continue to feel supported at school, so thank you.
Thank you all for coming in and sharing your thoughts with us this evening.
Next speaker, Phoeben Lema.
Hello, my name's Febin Lema, and 1 month and 8 days ago, I stood here before you in my black United Minority Girls shirt, speaking of reasons for why the Office of Equity and Excellence should be kept at all high schools. Throughout that time, my fellow classmates and I took part in various forums to stand up for what we believed. We learned the importance of speaking up, taking action, and having our voices heard. We not only spoke in front of you on that day, but we spoke to TV channels, our school's broadcast stations, etc. Seeing all of my fellow United Minority Girls and cohort brothers, as well as others who see the great that is done by Office of Equity and Excellence, stand up and speak loudly for such a great cause was a sign in itself for the good that the office does. Even though I am upset that this was even ever on the table, I am grateful that you have heard all of the voices that other students and I have used and the message that we have conveyed in order to keep such a crucial role. And on behalf of me and the future minorities that will benefit from the decision that you have made, I'd like to say thank you. And beneath the gratefulness, I believe that the success and support of people of color, regardless of whether we are the minority or the majority, is something that I hope will not have to be debated in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in this evening.
Next speaker.
Sorry. And is that all the students?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with the way the students can come to the podium and express their heartfelt, eloquent comments and stay under the 2-minute, which has happened almost universally with every student that we've heard from this year. So thank you all.
Okay, next speaker, Adrian Wright.
Good evening. My comments are about class sizes. To summarize the research, class size is one of the few factors that influence learning that we can control. Student achievement increases in all groups as class sizes decrease. The disadvantaged benefit the most. The racial and socioeconomic achievement gap narrows as class sizes decrease. The more years spent in smaller classes, the longer the benefits last. Reducing class size is costly, but worth it, as the benefits outweigh the increased costs of hiring more teachers. High school graduation rates increase. College entrance exams taken increase. Student behavior is improved. Fewer are incarcerated, and lifetime incomes increase. Teachers are the highly educated professionals who know best what works and what doesn't in the classroom. We know through our own education and our own years of experience that smaller classes support student learning and education best practices. As class sizes continue to increase, teachers will be even more overwhelmed and less effective. Student learning suffers as a result, and yet teachers remain accountable for student achievement regardless of large class sizes and their negative effects. Additionally, in many disciplines, like science, larger classes become a safety issue, and as a result, larger classes cannot participate fully in the curriculum. Most science classes currently exceed the OSHA safety standards. This is about student learning conditions and educator working conditions. APS should lead by example, one that supports best practices, that begins with smaller classes. We are the 5th wealthiest county in the country. Every incoming high school student gets a MacBook computer. Voters also tend to support bond measures asking for more money for schools. If we have the will, we can find the money to hire more teachers, and we will all benefit. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker, William Gillum.
Good evening. Thank you. I was here several weeks ago with my 270 favorite rowers, and I'm here tonight to say thank you. They're all at practice tonight on the water, practicing and preparing for states, which began this past Saturday and is again next Saturday. I want to just say thank you on behalf of all the high school rowing teams that you listened to them and you understood the opportunities that crew provides for them and the student well-being and the things that they get out of it. They so eloquently said it when they were here, and we're so grateful that you guys understood that and were able to fund crew going forward. We'd also like to separately thank you for supporting some of those other things, such as equity and excellence, that our kids felt solidarity in when they were here, and you saw them stand up back then. Student opportunities in general are so important to them. I want to give you one quick data point about seizing these opportunities, and that was the state championships. This past Saturday were the novice and the freshman rowers, and our novice and freshman rowers did excellently. This coming Saturday, if anybody wants to come, are the varsity rowers, and it's at Sandy Run Regional Park. This past Saturday, there were 32 schools that were represented. 12 events Arlington high schools competed in. Of those 12 events, we took 4 gold, first place, 4 silver, second place, and 1 bronze. That's the best of any school that showed up there, any school system. So you can be very proud of what the students did here and how they're seizing these opportunities. Lastly, I just wanted to put this into the record. This is a thank you on behalf of all the rowers here in Arlington Public Schools. Just saying, again, thank you for your support. We'll enter that into the record. Thank you, and welcome. Please come out Saturday if you can to see the varsity state championships. Thank you.
Where is it Saturday?
Sandy Run Regional Park.
Sandy Run.
On the Aqua Park. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill, for coming out tonight and sharing your comments with us.
Next speaker, Christy Sauer. Next speaker, Alan Baitler.
Good evening. Over the past number of weeks, I know you have heard from many voices opposing the superintendent's original budget proposal, one that included the possibility of eliminating the equity and excellence coordinator positions at the 3 high schools. I also know you have read many emails in support of the work done by the coordinators at Wakefield, Washington Liberty, and Yorktown. You've also seen and listened to many minority students attending your meetings, those involving the full board, and also at office hours. Videos were also created that demonstrated how important these equity and excellence positions are for students of color. I know this has been a challenging few weeks filled with many late-night meetings. I'm writing to say I'm glad you chose to listen to and prioritize the voices of current students, alumni, and parents. You paid attention to those who raised their concerns about the impact that the proposed cuts would mean for students who look like them. Your decision to prioritize those voices sends a message very loud and clear to the Arlington community and beyond. The school board of Arlington Public Schools will not eliminate positions that seek to level the playing field, both within the school system and in the larger society. You have chosen to continue Arlington's 20-year tradition of being a leader in the field of equity, and I applaud your decision as a board. Over the years, I have often heard members of the school board wonder what exactly the coordinators do in the schools. My sincere hope is that through this process, each of you has a much better and larger understanding of the social, emotional, academic, and economic impact coordinators provide by their efforts to challenge and support minority students toward their educational and professional dreams. Thank you again for your willingness to stand up for those in our community who are too often underrepresented and marginalized because of their race and ethnicity.
Thank you very much for coming in this evening, Alan. Thank you all.
Next speaker, Judith Knight.
Good evening, members of the school board, and Dr. Murphy and the executive leadership team. My name is Judith Knight, and I am a retired APS teacher. Through most of my years in Arlington, I could count on a step increase and a COLA. The step rewarded my service, and the COLA kept our salaries competitive. About 10 years ago, and more importantly, as I thought about retirement, that pattern changed. The compensation policy was changed and pay became inconsistent. Morale went down the drain, and with a pay increase not a certainty, some even began looking elsewhere. I understand the need for a COLA to stay competitive and to help those at the top of their scales. But without a consistent step increase, those who come behind me will not have the hope of making it to that promised top. APS needs to follow their policy and grant the step. Hopefully next year we will start the budget process asking for enough money for a step and a COLA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judith, for coming in and sharing your comments with us this evening.
Next speaker, Ms. Ingrid Gant.
Good evening. My name is Ingrid Gant, president of the Arlington Education Association. Protocol already being established. I would like to take this opportunity to wish our teachers a happy Appreciation Day and week. They so desperately deserve it. We have the hardest working teachers in Arlington County. However, it's unfortunate that many of our educators have focused on this budget for months now. Staff, employees, citizens of Arlington have been attending work sessions, school board meetings, weighing in or engaged, and the county board meetings as well. We're at a time where policy G-3.2.1 title salary states in order to attract and retain quality employees, Arlington Public Schools provides compensation to its employees that is competitive in the region and which ensures a living wage for all employees. The AEA plan has consistently advocated for a step increase for our employees because they benefit from successful evaluations and they deserve it. The plan has also asked that a COLA increase is compatible to the Social Security standards, not the suggested 2.4% is given, so that employees not receiving a step will receive something because what? They deserve it. It is embarrassing, it is appalling, and downright disrespectful that members of the school board would want educators to give their all, to go above and beyond the standards and requirements, to teach according to our strategic goals, yet we only give them crumbs when it's budget time. How dare you ask the hardest working men and women in Arlington County to give more, turn the other cheek, work to the max, and you give less. I ask you to put your son and daughter in our place and see if you wanted them to just suffer in Arlington to make ends meet. Better yet, take 2 or 3 jobs to survive. Meanwhile, health insurance is going up. Everything, rates, mortgage, everything is going up. What happened to bringing our employees at the table? We need to fix the scales, but not at the cost of the employee's income and continue sacrifices. A step in a COLA is what is required at this time. Do what you want educators to do every day.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ingrid, for coming in this evening.
Next speaker, Leslie Stockton.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Good evening, school board members. I'm Leslie Stockton, the AEA Vice President, and I'm speaking on behalf of our members. I'm sure I don't have to remind you and tell you that we do have an educator shortage across the nation. And part of, and a significant part of, the reason that we have an educator shortage across the nation are that wages have not kept pace with not only inflation, but also the work that we're asking our educators to do. This year's budget has included a step for everyone, which is a wonderful thing to do, and I'm glad that policy now reflects that as well. But one of the things that we're looking at is to say that everyone in the system deserves a little something. Not only do our educators who are at the step level that will advance them forward on their seniority track, but also on their pay track, they absolutely deserve that step. There are also members that do not enjoy the benefit of a step increase that'll increase their pay. And so we need to think about how do we go about getting a COLA as well. I realize our budget is tight this year. I realize we're looking forward to the future. And I echo the remarks of several of our other speakers in that I would love the board to look at how do we go about making sure that we go back to the pre-2000 levels to be able to say that we receive a step and a COLA for all employees. We pride ourselves on having quality staff. We pride ourselves on making sure that we attract and retain quality staff. I'm asking the board to make sure that you also consider paying quality wages so that those staff will be retained and will be respected in the hard, difficult, challenging work that they're asked to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leslie, for coming in this evening.
There are no more speakers.
I think
Oh, okay. Yes,
gonna
you
call
can
her?
come up. Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
Christy Sard.
All right.
Sorry, I literally got a babysitter 20 minutes ago. My name is Christy Sawert, and I'm speaking here tonight on behalf of the Aquatics Committee. Throughout this budget cycle, the Aquatics Committee has advocated for reforms in the way community users of APS's pools are charged for operations and maintenance, or O&M costs. Our recommendations would have effectively ended APS's decades-long subsidy of the Arlington County Department of Parks and Rec programs and the practice of charging higher admission fees to other community swimmers. Stakeholder support has been overwhelming. Unfortunately, these recommendations have not been implemented. Although the county did step up with additional tax support, and for the first time, all non-APS users of the pools will be assessed an O&M fee, these actions ultimately fall short. The county's fee schedule for DPR users is still significantly lower than what APS charges other community users. Thus, APS will still be footing more than half of the bill to support DPR programs, and not all community users will be paying their fair share of O&M costs. Despite these setbacks, we are grateful that APS has taken steps to provide more parity between the DPR fee schedule and that used by APS for all other community swimmers by rolling back the fiscal year 2019 fee increase and by lowering to age 60 the age at which senior rates apply. We also want to thank APS for not implementing the proposed Tier 3 non-discretionary field trip cut that would have effectively ended the elementary swim program that so many of our children benefit from. As we look forward to fiscal year 2021, we ask you to end the use of two fee scales that result in differential treatment of one community user group over another. We are committed to work with you toward this end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christy, for coming in this evening. Take a brief pause here for informational purposes. Sorry, ma'am, I don't know your name. You came up here to deliver a speaker's slip, and I think there was a little confusion about the timing and the agenda item and stuff, but if you have remarks for the school board, I invite you to come up to the podium and, give us your 2 minutes. All right, thank you. And could you just tell us your name when you get up here? I'm sorry? Nakia Arnold. Ms. Arnold, please.
I'm sorry. My name is Nakia Arnold, and I work at the Arlington Career Center as a PEP assistant. I am one of the assistants that were on the surplus list. That has affected me in many ways, not knowing what the decision is and having to be in that whole space has been a big stress for me. I have worked for Arlington County, APS for 9 years. I started off at transportation, and then I just started working at the Career Center. You guys don't understand the stress of not knowing if you're going to be able to provide for your family come September or even to finish off the year. I'm so sorry that I'm getting emotional. I just lost my grandmother. My mother just had emergency open heart surgery, so I had to be there 100% for my family. And just to hear this and be dedicated to APS, who I thought was my family, and to know that my position can be snatched right underneath of me within any given time. I just hope that you guys just find the budget and get it together, because and it's not just me, it's a lot more people who's not even able to be here or to even speak up. But I speak for all who is going through this today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your heartfelt remarks this evening. And thank you to all the speakers. That's the end of our speaker list? Okay. All right. Thank you. And the board will consider your comments as we prepare to vote on our final budget, which will be this coming Thursday in 2 days, on May 9th. We are now at the consent portion of the agenda. And may I please have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I move to adopt the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion passes 5-0. Thank you all. And Tanya will briefly comment on some of the policies and actions that were just approved on the consent agenda.
We just approved policy K-2.1, Virginia Freedom of Information Act on the consent agenda, and that came up for information at our last board meeting. So if anyone is curious about the changes, and I believe there were not many to that, you can watch that in our archives. We also adopted with the consent agenda an amendment to school board policy B-8.4, compensation and benefits for school board members. This policy was adopted earlier this year. During the school board's policy subcommittee review, we try to meet every month. We became aware that there was a PIP to this policy that we weren't aware of as we were reviewing our policies. And the PIP was not comprehensive. So what we did is we added some language that just references all of the policies that mention benefits for APS employees that also apply to the school board. So because it was not a substantive change, it was just a reference, we will put it forth on the consent agenda, and also because it was an amendment, not a full review. And if anyone has any questions or concerns, please email Engage or email the school board, and we're happy to discuss that with you. But that is what we adopted on the consent agenda today. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for that clarification, Tanya. Excuse me. And next, we will hear citizen comment on non-agenda items. Claudia, do we have speakers?
Yes, we have 3 speakers. The first speaker is Ana Viquez. The next speaker is Ann Quinn.
Good evening. I'm reading this for a parent who wishes to remain anonymous to protect her child's privacy. As the parent of a child suffering depression and suicidal ideation, it distresses me to hear emotionally manipulative arguments that LGBTQ students are the only ones at risk. Mental health issues should never be used as bargaining chips to secure special provisions for one group while ignoring others. LGBTQ students are not the only students with high rates of mental distress. According to the 2017 Youth Risk Behavior Survey, Black and Asian students received so little support for depression that data couldn't even be collected. Why not create policies which serve all students' well-being, regardless of orientation or ethnicity? My son was bullied in 6th grade. The bully called him racist, threatened him, and assaulted him. She rallied others to ostracize him and turned former friends against him. This child identifies as bisexual, and yet she mocked my son as being gay. He couldn't go to part of the cafeteria at lunch because she sat there with friends, and he said, quote, "I'm afraid of what they would do to me." This led to my son's depression, self-cutting, suicidal ideation, and hospitalization. Our community must prevent all bullying and teach children to be respectful to everyone. We needn't learn the tenets of Islam to respect Muslims. We needn't read the Bible to be tolerant of Christians. We needn't teach children details of sexual orientation and practice for them to learn that discriminating against LGBTQ people is wrong. To have an effective anti-bullying program, APS must stand for all families and not infuse curricula with controversies. True diversity respects all forms of uniqueness and not just those who wear certain labels and whose activists lobby the loudest. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in and sharing your comments with us this evening.
Next speaker, Susan Cox.
Good evening. I'm Susan Cox, a concerned citizen, mother, and educator. And when I look at the school boards, the job description is to be good stewards of our resources. With that in mind, I think a plan should come first and not a scrambled effort after the fact. It might possibly be irresponsible with lawsuits pending, whether, no matter how you feel on the name change, a stay might be the most responsible thing to do before implementing a name change too hastily. I understand about $9,000 was spent for a name change facilitator. When there are serious budget issues, I don't understand this. It doesn't make sense to me, especially when there were sexist and racist remarks at these meetings that were left unchecked, and still no response when I wrote letters. So is the school board concerned of that? I wonder if they're doing their job thoroughly. Don't let the community down with lack of transparency, because transparency will equal trust. Follow your policies and your ethics. Follow your rules, state them clearly. Follow the recommendations on your committees, or why have them if you're just going to do what you're going to do? That's a waste of time and resources of everyone. Be responsible in the small things and in the large things. Stop the waste. Don't increase taxes unnecessarily. Keep this in mind when planning the budget and expenditures. Listen to your community and do right by them. I implore you. Thank you. Be concerned and wise spending with the education of all of our children. Don't spew divisive rhetoric and propaganda to suit your own agenda. Be attentive to the community and really listen to all of the feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cox. Thank you very much for coming in and sharing your comments with us this evening.
There are no more speakers.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the speakers. And we are now at the information item portion of the meeting. We have two information items. First is our proposed VSBA 2019 legislative positions. Barbara, would you please introduce this item?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We're bringing up Lila Wise, who represents us during the legislative session in Richmond. And we're doing something a little bit different this year. We're trying a new piece of the VSBA legislative package process. This is going to take just a minute for me to summarize. Every November, when the VSBA meets together, we have a delegate assembly and one person from each board, and we determine what the VSBA legislative package will be for the entire states, representing the entire state in terms of our advocacy in the state legislature. We have always participated in that delegate assembly and voted, but the fact is there's another piece of the process, which is that as a board we can propose what might go into that package. So we're going to try that this year. We talked about trying it, and we're bringing this to the board to see what you all think. The deadline is in June for us to submit proposals. Dr. Merkvy and Ms. Wise and I got together and came up with 3 ideas, and Lila Wise is going to present those to you.
Good evening. Delighted to be here and do something different than some of the things that we've done before. And I'm sure you're going to have a good time voting on these in Williamsburg in November. There were 3 things that we felt pretty strongly about, and the first one is performance-based assessments. A little bit of background to this. During the General Assembly, there has always been a push for performance-based assessments. However, there are 2 very powerful legislators who do not believe in this and have been able to put roadblocks in the way of going ahead with this. One of them decided he wasn't going to run again, so we've only got 1 left. And what he did this year, even though legislation was not approved, put language in the budget that said you couldn't do this. So what we have here is that we propose that we just add this language to the position that VSBA already has, and of course, standards of learning assessments may be performance-based. So this does not require anything. It just allows for school divisions that are far ahead, as we are in Arlington, with performance-based assessments to go ahead and do them. I had an interesting discussion with the state superintendent last week and told him that we were going to have this as a position. And he said, we're trying very hard to make sure that this happens. He said, in fact, I think that we'll be able to do it even without you guys. And I said, well, that's great, but we're still looking at doing this. So that's the first one. The second, you've heard this before from me because we've had this as one of our positions for a number of years, and that's the State School Health Advisory Committee. Senator Favola has put this in. She has worked very hard. Hasn't happened, and so we thought that perhaps if we had more support in terms of all of the school divisions in Virginia, this might have a better chance. And the third one is coordination between local school divisions and the Virginia Community College system. And this is a new position to provide increased articulation between local school divisions, Virginia Community College system, and curriculum alignment, mathematics intervention services, and credit and transfer pathways. One of the things that we hear all over the state is students who are successful at the high school level and they take SOL tests and pass the SOL tests, get to the community college where they take their placement tests, and very often are not as successful, especially in mathematics. A couple of problems. One, the curriculum is not aligned between what we're teaching at the high school level, what is being taught at the community college level. Another is that many of the students who are in this situation have not taken math for the last 2 years. Parents are beginning to say, wait a minute here. My child passed all the SOLs in math, get to community college. Now they have to take remedial courses, which cost money, and non-credit, and so they are not able to apply those to their positions. So what we're calling for here is some more articulation, coordination between community college and high schools, and see if we can make it a seamless transition from high school to community college. Be glad to answer any questions, or...
Thank you very much. If you just remain on station for a minute to see if we have speakers, and if we do, we'll come back afterwards and questions from board members. Other speakers? Okay, well. So board members, do you have questions or comments for Lila? Thank you for the presentation, Lila. Yep. Go ahead, Tanya.
It's good to see you, Lila. Thank you for the presentation. I had some questions on the topic 1. Performance-based assessment. So I actually pulled up the VSBA positions manual, I don't know, guidebook.
Yes.
And I read 1.7, and so because this is the first year we're doing this, I'm not sure what the process is. So I support moving to performance-based assessments, but position 1.7 states that the VSBA supports the establishment of a balanced assessment and accountability system as defined by local school boards. And then it goes on to say, such as the standards of learning tests. And so it looks like it's supporting both. So are we asking them, when we present this as a change, are we, in the proposed legislative positions, it says add the following language, but that language somewhat contradicts their proposal for balance. So I'm just curious, like, are we saying, okay, we're going to propose this language, and therefore they're saying Arlington County is asking us to incorporate this in our position, which then may change their position from not supporting both? I'm just confused as to the process and what we're specifically asking and where this language would fit in that position piece.
I don't believe that it's changing their position.
Okay.
Because they're saying we want to look at everything.
Okay.
Where we are today is that we have language in the budget that says you can't use performance-based assessments.
Okay.
And so all we want to do is put in the position that school divisions may use performance-based assessment. So I don't think that there's any problem.
I think, perfect. I think that's where there's a confusion, because that was my next question, is when it talks about, because I noted the description in the budget about how the end of course shall not be performance-based. So are we requesting them to advocate for removal of that from the budget? Or we can't do that, we're just saying to put in a position that contradicts that budget language, and it's the budget for the state?
Exactly.
Okay, so the VSBA, well, we're asking them to put language in there that then, see, that's where I'm confused. I need to know what I'm voting on, so that's why I'm a little bit confused, sorry.
Well, we're all new to this. This is the first time
It's
Arlington
exciting that we're doing this.
has done this. So, the process is something different for us. Yeah.
Yeah, if I could just follow up on that, that's exactly right, what you all said. We're trying this process for the first time.
Right.
I do believe there is a committee process that takes place once we turn our proposals in. There's a VSBA committee that looks at all the proposals. I would not be surprised if there's some iteration that goes on and, potentially coming back to us, or, by the time, and of course, we may or may not make it all the way through and become a proposal in November, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's kind of iterative work. So we're going to vote on our proposal at this point, what we're going to turn into the VSBA.
So this is
in
really,
June.
our proposal is really a presentation of our intent. It's a language of intent of what we're asking them for their position. And so the way we're doing is through amending that position to include maybe performance-based.
Add that one sentence to the position that's already there.
Okay.
And one of the other parts about this is we actually get the chance to present why we want to do this to the committee that is going to make recommendations. So we'll probably be going to Charlottesville at some point to do that.
Okay, thank you, Lila, I appreciate that. So it was just that clarification.
No,
since
it
this
wasn't.
is new. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Goldstein, I would like to make a suggestion of another position that we should consider having and take to the VSBA. I'm very concerned, and I think a lot of citizens are, about the school-to-prison pipeline. And there has been legislation introduced by Delegate Jeff Bourne of Richmond and Delegate Mike Mueller from Newport News last year. It was House Bill 1688 and House Bill 177 that, I can paraphrase the wording, but ultimately what it does is it prevents police officers from charging elementary or secondary students with disciplinary conduct, disorderly conduct if they're on school property.
Right.
That's one of them. And the other was to prevent juvenile crime, to provide more support services and community diversion. And I know both of those failed in committee, as well as Senate Bill 1107 from Jennifer McClellan, which looked to eliminate misdemeanor charges for things other than for disorderly conduct.
Right.
So I think it seems to me, given that Virginia has the highest rate of referrals to law enforcement from its schools, that really should be something that our school board should be concerned about, so that we can take the responsibility back to ourselves to deal with that through disciplinary policy. So I'm looking at Lila, but I know this begins with us. I would be interested in us fashioning some kind of wording to take to VSBA to see if we could be supportive of our legislators who are grappling with getting something done in this area. And what I'm ultimately interested in, given the fact that we just reworked an MOU, is to allow us the ability within our own schools to deal with these issues as disciplinary matters without, by code, having to refer them to law enforcement. So I would like to fashion something to do that, to take to VSBA, given that we have the highest rate in Virginia. I would hope that our school boards would be interested in taking some of that responsibility back, because it's gone pretty far in terms of criminalizing some of that behavior. So that's what I'd be interested in doing.
Now, I have not had a chance, obviously,
know you haven't, and I'm
to
springing this
look
on you.
at what the SBA already has.
I looked, there was nothing.
Nothing, okay.
That's why I'm suggesting it, because I
Sure.
looked through there and there was nothing on student discipline, and in particular, nothing related to this. And right now, we don't have any choice but with some things like disorderly conduct, but to refer them. And I would like to see that loosened up. So that's why I'm raising it now, because I think Virginia, given that its rate of referrals, 30% of those students have disabilities. There's a lot of reasons why I'm very concerned about this. It's disproportionately students of color that get referred in this way, and I would like to see us, if we join together with VSBA, maybe we could work with these legislators who are already out front on this and see if we could support them.
So, excuse me, Lila, could you talk to us about what the process is at this point, assuming that, we've had an idea come up at the dais, and of course, it's not a vote here. We'd still have to, spend some time fashioning and talking about that. But let's assume that this idea just does roll forward. What would be the process? How do we get this into the BSBA legislative positions? What's the timeline for that, so that we all know, what the process is from this point on?
They need it by June 10th. And you, as a board, do need to approve whatever goes.
Okay.
So those are the two things. Now, as far as putting something together, I can do that the next day or two for you all to look at. Because since there's nothing in VSBA, the language is really pretty clear in the legislation that is out there, Senator McClellan's and Delegate Bourne's. So it would not be very difficult to come up with some language.
Yeah, and I think it might need a little massaging given where it's coming from, but I think it's a start. It's a start to at least consider it. So that just depends on whether or not my board colleagues would be interested in pursuing that or not. So I know I'm swinging, but it's really come to my attention. I've been doing a lot of reading about this, and it seems to me I would like the opportunity to take care of the children in our schools without referring them.
Okay, thank you for the suggestion. And let me get back to that in a minute. Are there other comments or questions for Lila?
I have a quick comment. I would be interested in seeing what that language would look like, so I just wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments or questions outside of Nancy's suggestion?
Is there anything left over, Lila, from last year that we need to be thinking about as well? Are we good?
On school
In terms of the things that we advocated for last year that may need more high-profile?
The school health advisory was the one that we chose as one that did, and it's one that's been out there, and it's such a good idea, and it never can get through, so.
Okay, thank you.
Do something.
Okay, thank you. So let me get with the other board members, talk to them individually and, assess their ideas on this, and also with Dr. Murphy, and we will, get back to you shortly on your offer to, draft something on this.
Yeah.
You say that they need it by the 10th of June. We have a board meeting on May 23rd and another board meeting on June 6th. So I guess those would be our two opportunities. Where are we? We're at the 8th, the 7th,
And we have
9th.
one on the 9th.
Yeah, we have one on the 9th and on the 23rd of May, and then June 6th. So I'm just trying to kind of look at the timeline a little bit. Okay. Other questions, comments? No? Lila, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I know we moved this item up to today because we were looking at a light agenda, and so thank you for being flexible and coming in this evening.
Of course. Thank you.
And our next information item, we will hear proposed revisions to School Board Policy B6, School Board Policy Process, and Tanya will present this item.
Let me get the clicker. Thank you, Chair Goldstein. I am presenting revisions to School Board Policy B-6, School Board Policy Process. So the School Board Policy Subcommittee reviewed three policies and one reviewed three policies and one policy implementation procedure that had to do with our policy processes. They were B-6 policies and policy implementation procedures, along with the PIP, and policies B-6.3 and policy C-8, policy monitoring. When we reviewed all of these policies, was determined in working with the policy review team and the policy subcommittee that we felt that the policy would be better all in one, having one policy that discussed our policy process. So policy B-6 was rewritten and expanded to include all of the current practice and procedures related to our policy management and processes, and the operational content of the policies was moved into the policy implementation procedure for B-6.1. So the relevant content from policy B-6.3 and policy C-8 was incorporated into the rewritten policy B-6, and any redundant information is deleted. So we are recommending that policy B-6.3 and C-8 be retired. We usually provide a marked copy of our policies when we make changes, but because this was rewritten, what you will see if you look on board docs is policy B-6.3 and C-8 and policy B-6, and I think we included the original policy B-6. So it's not marked up because it would be illegible, but it really just delineates our process. We also reviewed the policy implementation procedure for B-6.1, just to ensure that it's reflecting current practices that we have. It was a lot of work that we did. So the recommendation is to rename policy B-6 to policy process to encompass everything, and approve the revised content of policy B-6, which incorporates the information from policy B-6.3 and policy C-8. And then with that adoption, retire policy B-6.3 and policy C-8 policy procedures. So I'm open to questions and discussions, and I did have a chance to review all of it before today's agenda, so I do have a couple of comments. But do any of my colleagues have any questions? Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
Yes, we have one speaker.
Okay, great.
Oh, I'm sorry, speakers?
Yes, one speaker.
Okay. Good. You want to call the speaker? Thank you, Tanya.
Mr. Dean Fleming.
I'm sorry.
Good evening, Board. I have a very quick question. The intent of most boards like yourselves is to move towards more transparency. If I read this correctly, the new policy on your procedures, you have the ability now to have an information item and then vote on it the same night, which I think we've done a few times here recently, which was not the policy prior to that. So it very clearly says now that it gives you the ability to have an information item and then turn around and vote on it at the same night without having the public have an opportunity to come back. Is that the intention? I know that's a question, but it's a fairly important question. Anybody like to go for it? Would you want me to quote the section that I'm referring to? It says the draft policy is brought forward for information and then action at a school board meeting, and in parentheses, meetings. But it always used to say you'd bring it for information at one meeting, and then at the next meeting or a subsequent meeting, you'd vote on it. That gave the opportunity for the community to have two bites of the apple. So is it the intention to do this? To take it down to information and action in the same night? No comment? This is basically the equivalent of changing the way you write your laws, your procedures, your policies. Is this the intention? No comment. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming in this evening and sharing your comments with us, Mr. Fleming. Board members, do you have questions or comments on the proposed revisions to School Board Policy B6 as Tanya has outlined it? Yes, Nancy.
I just have one comment, but first of all, thank you. I know that the committee worked a long time on this, and I want to thank Julia Burgos and the staff for coming up with a couple of different iterations before we brought it forward. And I just have one comment. I know that Ms. Salento has some others, and I support what she said. She's written them to us, but I'm going to support those. They're minor. But just a thought for the PIP, which is under the superintendent's purview. There's a description of the policy review committee and the policy review team, I believe it's called. And on both of those, I would just suggest giving yourselves a little wiggle room and say, as others are invited, and others may be invited, just because we tend, when we write these things, to people go back to them like they're the Holy Grail, and that's fine, except that if it doesn't give you a little wiggle room that you may invite other people to be in either of those teams, then it doesn't give you the opportunity to do that. So it's just some suggested wiggle room wording so that those of us, it may be read after those of us who wrote it are gone. So that's just a simple comment.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments, clarifications? Tanya?
Yes, I had a few comments or edits that I wanted to mention, and then we can discuss if there are things that we want to put into B-6 before we adopt it. On page 1.
Which is not scheduled for tonight.
No, it's not scheduled for tonight. The adoption is scheduled for, I think, the meeting on the 23rd, not the 9th, but possibly the 9th. I would have to check the agenda. I want to say the 23rd.
I think it's the 23rd.
Yeah. Okay. So some of the comments that I have is on page 1 of the policy, and we talk about that the policy will be adopted as a revised policy when it goes through a full or partial policy. And then underneath that, there's a section about when we adopt a policy as amended, which refers to if we have, if there's a change in code, if there's a change in our process that causes us to change, for instance, in a budget process, then it requires a change of policy. So I have concerns in this section. It says it'll go through either a full or partial policy. And I believe that if we're doing a partial policy, it's probably due to the fact, a partial policy review, it's probably due to the fact that something has changed in our system, whether it's in our budget. So that should really be an amendment. So I'm asking us to consider changing the language in that section to read that the policy will be adopted as revised when it goes through a full review process versus a full review process or partial review process. So that's that section. And then in the policy waiver clause, I feel there was a comment that, I think it was from the policy review team, that we left out staff. So I agree with the comment in that clause, and I would like to add staff in there after students. And that is the same for page 3 of the policy, B-6, under the monitoring clause. I would like to add staff after parents. And then finally, there is a section on page 3 in the first paragraph that is really just clarifying that the waiver piece does not supersede the policies in section G. So it was a little bit unclear the way it was written. So that's really more of a clerical error. So I've shared this with the board, but those are the comments that I have. And so if people are support those comments, then I would ask that we revise it before we adopt it at our next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Other comments or questions? Thoughts on what's been presented? Board members, no? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you particularly to the Policy Review Subcommittee for your Herculean work, and not just this policy revision, but all of the work that you've been doing to revise our policies over the last year. I know, for me, I'm very, very grateful that you all are engaging in this and, trying to get your arms around it, because we do have, do you know how many? Nearly 200 policies, and we are, under the yoke of having, well, that's right. That's right. Thank you. But we're under the yoke of having to look at and revise these policies every 5 years. So thank you all for doing that. This item will come back for board action on May 23rd. And we are now at new business. Board members, do you have any new business? Okay, hearing none, I just want to note that we started this meeting, we made a switch in the agenda to have this meeting, the public hearing, come after the last budget work session. And as is the case with most public hearings, there are a plethora of speakers, and so we decided to start the meeting earlier than we normally do, 6 p.m. We didn't have the volume of speakers that we expected, and so we are ending the meeting early. I just want to clarify that we didn't quite manage to get all of the agenda items switched from other meetings to this one to kind of lighten our load, and the other 1, 2, 3, 4, I guess we got 4 more board meetings left for this school year. So that's why we are here at 7:12, and hearing no new business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.